With the former New Jersey Nets about to become the first major pro sports team to play in Brooklyn since the Dodgers last played there on September 24th, 1957, it's an appropriate time to visit with the man who broadcast that game, Vin Scully. So, 55 years and 2,785 miles later, here we are in the Vin Scully press box at Dodger Stadium with Mr. Scully himself. And Vin, I'll start by asking you your recollections of that final game in Brooklyn.
Well, Jay, it was rather sad for everyone concerned. We had an organist her name was Gladys Gooding, and she was very down. She was the answer to a trivia question. The trivia question was, who played for the Dodgers, the Knicks, and the Rangers? And the answer was the organist, Gladys Gooding. So she sat in her little booth suspended from the upper deck, and the very first song she played that night was My Buddy, which is a pretty sad song, and she went down from there. So the mood in the ballpark was very heavy, very heavy. And meanwhile, they played and they won the game, but there was no joy about the win. And eventually they moved on. So that last game was pretty sad, pretty sad.
The attendance that day was only 6,700. So at that point, was it apathy or was it anger that the team was leaving?
Well, I can't describe the attitude of people. I know my own, which was bittersweet. They also knew in advance that this was going to be the last game. So I think resignation would be the better word, where people just knew they were going, and they just didn't show up for the ball game, which, by the way, was televised. So a lot of people in the borough saw it as well.
What made games in Brooklyn different than the other ballparks around the league and even the other stadiums in New York?
Well, certainly the biggest difference was the size of the ballpark. It was very small, or as you would say, intimate, so that the fans were very visible. In the modern-day ballpark, and there's nothing wrong with it, but in the modern-day ballpark, crowds are somewhat like wallpaper. You're not aware of individuals. But when you were in Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, you were constantly aware of individual fans. They were always doing something. They'd be dropping notes to the outfielders. I mean, it was just a rather remarkable place. When Billy Herman, who was a great player, eventually came to coach for the Dodgers, he said it was amazing. It was like playing a World Series game every day. The energy in the ballpark was truly that. It was electric.
Was there a Brooklyn attitude that you would say permeated the crowd?
In some ways, the team represented the borough. Now, the borough was somewhat of the laughing stock from the lordly Manhattan and the big towers, etc. And you're not old enough to remember, but during that period of time, in the 40s and 50s, and certainly during the war, if there was a war movie about a group of soldiers, the clown, the loudmouth, the rough-edged guy was always from Brooklyn. Usually the mention of the word Brooklyn elicited some laughter. So the people related to their team answered the jibes from all those people in the Bronx and Manhattan. So yes, that team meant a great deal to the people who lived in the borough of churches, I might add.
Now, even though there are teams that play in Queens and Bronx and Manhattan, they all bear the name New York. What do you think it means to the residents of the borough that this team, the Nets, in their new stadium will be called Brooklyn?
Well, I'm not sure how it will happen, but if it worked as it did with the Dodgers and baseball, it will endear the team to the residents of the borough. There is a great deal of civic pride in the borough, and I'm sure, and I certainly wish the Nets well, it is ironic that the Nets are going to be playing at the exact spot in Brooklyn where Walter O'Malley wanted to build the geodesic dome that would have contained the baseball team. So Robert Moses turned him down. He moved out, and now, lo and behold, 50-some-odd years later, they're building a stadium, and it'll house a basketball team.
When the Dodgers did move and you came along out west with them, how long did it take in your mind for them to stop being the team from Brooklyn and to truly become the Los Angeles Dodgers?
I think probably the second year that they were here. Yeah, that fast. The reason was When they came out here in 1958, they had to make a decision. Will we bring veteran players who are, by and large, somewhat over the hill? Or should we bring kids and tell everybody that we're building for a championship team? Well, they opted to go with the well-known names, and that team finished 7th in an 8-team league. The next year, that team not only won the pennant, it won the World Series. And in 1959, all of a sudden, those guys from the East were suddenly these guys from the West.
Our guys out here, right?
You got it.
Your voice brings back a lot of memories for a lot of people, and you said that you like to be a bridge. You told the LA Times you like being a bridge to previous generations. What does it mean to you to be a bridge, a connection, a Brooklyn bridge, if you were, to the team's time in Brooklyn?
Well, that bridge is covered with cobwebs. Most of the people that I knew when I was back there are gone. I don't go back there myself anymore, so I don't run into people who will say, gee, remember the old days, etc. So for me, and I mean nothing except what I'm saying, it's kind of disappeared into the mists of time. It was a wonderful place at a wonderful time. And now, eventually, as you do in life, you turn the page.
Well, the New Jersey Nets are turning the page, moving to Brooklyn. It was a pleasure to visit with a part of the Brooklyn Pro Sports past. Thank you, Vin.
Thank you, Jay, very much.